Racist cop arrests black teen for trespassing. Speechless when teen's father shows his badge. The sun was still high when Jamal Walker stepped off the basketball court. Sweat glistened on his forehead, his navy blue gym bag slung over one shoulder. His Air Jordans slapped the pavement with every tired step as he cut through Westbrook Heights, an upscale suburb just a mile from the recreation center. It was the shortest way home, even if it wasn't the most welcoming one. Jamal wasn't thinking about that now. He was scrolling through his messages, waiting for a reply from his classmate, Noah. Noah had said he'd be home around this time and told Jamal to stop by if he needed a ride. Jamal, polite as always, didn't want to knock on the door unannounced, so he sat briefly on the stone steps at the edge of the yard, under the shade of a wide-trimmed maple tree, texting. The houses on this street were massive. White columns, perfect lawns, driveways with electric gates, Mercedes, Lexuses, Teslas. Most of the people who lived here didn't look like him. They didn't talk like him. And they definitely didn't expect to see a black teenager sitting on the front steps of one of their neighbors' houses. Jamal knew that, but he also knew he wasn't doing anything wrong. From around the corner, the low rumble of a police cruiser grew louder. The vehicle slowed when it turned onto the street, creeping toward Jamal like a panther closing in on prey. When it stopped, Jamal barely looked up. He figured it would pass. Maybe someone had called about a dog or a noise complaint. That happens sometimes. Then the driver's door opened, and a tall, broad-shouldered man stepped out. Mid-40s, with pale skin and the kind of jawline you'd see in a war movie. His sunglasses reflected the sky, his holster tight at his hip. Officer Derek Collins had been on the force for 17 years. To some, he was a straight shooter, someone who didn't take crap from anyone. To others, especially in the black and brown neighborhoods across town, he was something else entirely. He walked slowly toward Jamal, hand resting on his holster. "You live here?" Collins barked. Jamal blinked, confused. "Excuse me?" I said, "Do you live here?" "No, sir. I'm waiting for a friend. This is his house." I texted him. Collins cut him off. "Step away from the property. Hands where I can see them." Jamal stood slowly, palms open. "Sir, I didn't do anything. I'm just..." "Get on your knees." Jamal's eyes widened. "What? Why?" "Get on your knees now or I'll put you down myself." Colin's voice was sharper now, full of warning. The kind of tone you don't argue with when you're a 16-year-old black kid and your heart is pounding like a war drum. Jamal knelt on the sidewalk, humiliated. A few neighbors peeked from behind curtains. A woman across the street raised her phone, quietly filming. Collins stepped behind him, yanked both wrists, and slapped on the cuffs with such force that Jamal winced. "What's in the bag?" "My gym stuff. I just came from basketball practice." "Ah, and you just happened to wander into one of the wealthiest neighborhoods in Fulton County. Looking like this?" "Looking like what, sir?" "Don't get smart with me." Collins pulled the gym bag open, shaking it out. A water bottle, basketball shoes, a sweaty jersey. He leaned in close. "You think you're slick? Coming here to scope things out. Pretend you're waiting on a friend. I've seen your type before." "My type?" "Yeah. The kind that starts with trespassing and ends up with someone's TV missing." "I didn't do anything. You can call Noah." "He." "Shut your mouth. You're under investigation." Another cruiser pulled up. A younger officer stepped out, Hispanic, in his 20s. "What's going on?" he asked. "Got a suspicious trespasser. Caught him sitting on someone's porch. Refused to give ID. Did he say whose house it is? Says he's got a friend. That old story. The younger cop glanced at Jamal, then back at Collins. He's a kid. Yeah. And that makes him invisible? Sir, maybe we should check his story. Collins didn't respond. He turned his back on the younger officer and grabbed his radio. Dispatch, this is Unit 4. I've got a suspect in custody. Requesting pickup for trespassing, possible intent to commit burglary. Jamal's mouth fell open. Burglary? Are you serious? Collins didn't answer. Jamal's mind raced. Should he tell them? Should he drop the one card he hated playing? He remembered his father's voice from years ago. Never assume your badge protects your family. It's just metal. It doesn't change how people see us. That voice had guided him through every moment of doubt. But this was different. He looked around again. More phones. More cameras. He knew what this would look like on the internet. Another black kid getting cuffed for being black in the wrong neighborhood. He clenched his jaw and swallowed the bitterness rising in his throat. The young officer walked a few feet away, whispering into his phone. His eyes flickered with something, maybe guilt, maybe fear. He typed something, fast. Jamal sat on the sidewalk, knees scraping the concrete, wrists bound, shame and fury swirling in his chest. Then the sirens came. Not loud, not blaring, but steady. A black SUV pulled up. Out stepped a man in a dark gray suit, his polished shoes clicking on the pavement. He didn't yell. He didn't run. He just walked toward the scene with an air of restrained power. Collins turned, annoyed. Sir, this is an active. That's my son, the man said. Collins froze. What? The man reached into his breast pocket and pulled out a gold badge. It gleamed in the late afternoon sun. Sheriff Raymond Walker, Fulton County. The silence was heavy. Even the cicadas seemed to stop chirping. Collins stared at the badge, then at the boy on the ground. Jamal didn't say a word. He just looked up at his father, eyes wide with something between relief and pain. Sheriff Walker didn't move for a moment. Then he spoke again. Uncuff him. No one argued. Collins fumbled with the key. The cuffs clattered to the pavement. Walker placed a hand gently on his son's shoulder. Let's go. As they walked away, cameras still rolling, Collins stood stiffly beside his cruiser. And for the first time that day, he had nothing left to say. The ride home was silent. Jamal sat in the passenger seat of his father's SUV, his hands folded tightly in his lap. His eyes stared straight ahead, blinking occasionally but not really seeing anything. Sheriff Raymond Walker glanced at him more than once, but said nothing. He knew that silence was a shield, especially for boys like his son, boys who were taught from a young age how to choke down rage before it turned into something fatal. The car pulled into their driveway in South Fulton. Their home was modest, 2 stories, neatly trimmed lawn, a flag on the porch. Nothing about it screamed power or prestige. It was a home built on principles, discipline, honor, and long days of sacrifice. Jamal got out and walked inside without a word. Walker followed. He didn't take off his badge. Not yet. In the kitchen, Jamal dropped his bag and leaned against the counter. You didn't have to come, he said finally, voice low. Walker opened the fridge, grabbed 2 bottles of water, and handed one over. You didn't call me. Someone else did, he replied. Jamal's jaw tightened. Could have handled it. Walker studied him. You think being humiliated in front of half the neighborhood is handling it? I didn't want to be the kid who gets saved by his daddy's badge. Walker stepped closer. You think that badge saved you? Jamal looked away. No, it just made him let go of the cuffs. Exactly, Walker said. And that's the problem. There was a long pause. Then Jamal whispered, "He didn't see me as a kid. He saw a threat, a suspect, a statistic." Walker nodded slowly. "And now the question is, what do we do with that?" The next morning, the video hit social media. It started with a 30-second clip from a neighbor across the street, uploaded with the caption, "Another black teen arrested for sitting while black." But wait for the twist. Within an hour, it was being shared across Facebook, TikTok, Instagram. Local news picked it up by noon. National networks called by sunset. Sheriff Walker's office fielded over 100 calls. Journalists wanted statements. Activists demanded action. Collins had been placed on administrative leave pending internal review. But the community wanted more. At the high school, whispers followed Jamal through the hallways. "Yo, man, that was you? They really cuffed you like that? Did you see your dad's face? Cold as hell." Some laughed like it was a movie. Some were angry. A few were scared. Jamal said little. He kept his head down. But inside, something had begun to shift. The tight knot in his chest wasn't going away. Not after seeing his father's eyes when he arrived. Not after replaying those words in his head. "Your type." That evening, Walker sat at his desk, staring at an old photo. Him in uniform 20 years ago, holding a baby Jamal, fresh from the hospital. He looked younger, hungrier. Before the walls were built inside him. His phone rang. It was Captain Ruiz, head of internal affairs. "We're moving forward with formal misconduct charges. You'll be briefed on the outcome this week." Walker's voice was flat. "What about the footage? It's public now. And damning. But you know how these things go. Union will push back. Lawyers will stall. It'll get messy." "I'm not afraid of messy," Walker said. Ruiz paused. "You sure you want to take this fight on? Some folks think you're too close to it." "My son was almost another name in the headlines." "That's not close. That's personal." Later that week, Walker agreed to a community forum. The auditorium was packed. Parents, teachers, ministers, local leaders, teenagers. The mood was tense but hopeful. He took the mic. "I didn't come here as your sheriff tonight," he began. "I came as a father." The crowd quieted. "I wear this badge with pride. I believe in the law. But if the law is used as a weapon instead of a shield, then it's no longer justice. It's fear." He paused, letting the words land. "My son was handcuffed for waiting on a friend. He did nothing wrong. But the color of his skin made him suspicious in the eyes of someone who swore to protect. That's not just bias. That's a threat to every parent in this room." A man in the front row stood up, tall, well-dressed, his voice steady. "So what are you going to do, Sheriff?" Walker looked him dead in the eye. "I'm going to change the way this department trains. We're bringing in community oversight. We're revising our stop and search protocol. And every officer, including myself, will be undergoing mandatory bias training." A murmur of approval rippled through the crowd. "But that's not enough," Walker said. "We need more than rules. We need a culture shift. We need officers who serve because they care, not because they're afraid. And we need young people like my son to believe that the system isn't rigged against them." The applause was cautious, then grew. In the back, Jamal watched silently. For the first time since that afternoon, he felt a flicker of something he hadn't allowed himself to feel in days. Hope. The next morning, Walker found a letter on his desk. It was unsigned, written in block letters, no return address. It read, "He's still just another black kid. The badge won't always be there. Neither will you." He folded it calmly, filed it in his drawer, then picked up his phone. "Jamal, I need you to come down to the office. We're going to talk to the new cadets today." "You want me to talk to cops?" "You've got something they need to hear, from someone who lived it." And so Jamal stood, later that week, in front of 20 recruits in blue uniforms, with their fresh notebooks and upright spines. He told them what it felt like to kneel on the sidewalk with a gun inches away from his life. How humiliation doesn't leave bruises but stains everything inside you. How one officer's assumptions can shape a lifetime of mistrust. And how, despite it all, he still believed something could change, if they had the courage to listen. Spring came late to Georgia that year. It had been nearly 2 months since the incident, since the cuffs, since the silence on the ride home, since the video that lit a fire Jamal never asked for but couldn't ignore. In that time, Officer Derek Collins had refused all interviews. His union filed a grievance, citing unlawful humiliation of an officer in good standing. Right-wing commentators turned him into a martyr. They painted Jamal as an instigator, a troubled youth with a questionable background. Despite having no criminal record, no history of misbehavior, and a GPA in the top 10% of his class. Justice, it seemed, had to wait its turn. But change didn't. Sheriff Walker kept his word. Bias training became mandatory. The Community Review Board gained access to bodycam footage. Officers were required to attend neighborhood listening sessions. Some rolled their eyes. Others quit. A few started asking real questions. And Jamal? He was changing too. He began mentoring at the rec center every Saturday, sitting with kids who looked like him, who hadn't yet felt the sting of suspicion in their own skin, but would. He spoke at 2 town halls, 3 schools, and 1 church. Every time he did, people leaned forward. Not because he shouted, but because he didn't. He told the truth calmly, and the calm made it hit harder. But despite the attention, despite the momentum, there was one thing he couldn't escape. The fear that next time the badge wouldn't show up in time. Or worse, that next time it wouldn't matter. The disciplinary hearing came quietly. No media, no cameras. Just a narrow municipal room with beige walls, foldable chairs, and fluorescent lights that hummed like tired bees. Jamal sat beside his father, wearing a dress shirt and slacks. Across from him sat Officer Collins in full uniform, flanked by a union rep and a lawyer with eyes like cracked glass. The review board was made up of 5 people, 2 civilians, 3 from internal affairs. They asked questions, replayed the body cam, reviewed the neighbor's footage, asked again, why did you approach the teen? Why did you escalate? Why were cuffs applied before verifying identification? Each time, Collins gave the same line. I perceived a threat. I followed protocol. Sheriff Walker stayed silent most of the hearing, until the final moment. They asked him formally for a recommendation. He looked at Collins. You've been an officer for 17 years. You know every streetlight in this county. And somehow you couldn't see a 16-year-old boy without seeing a suspect. Collins shifted, lips tight. Walker continued. You said you followed protocol. But protocol is only as good as the judgment behind it. Then he turned to the board. I'm not here to ruin a man's life. I'm here to prevent others from being taken. The board nodded. Collins was found guilty of misconduct, suspended for 6 months without pay, required to complete intensive racial bias rehabilitation. He would return to duty only upon reevaluation. The decision pleased no one completely, which is how most real justice works. It isn't perfect, but it's a start. Weeks later, the air warmed. Jamal's life began to settle. The school moved on. The internet did what it always does: find a new outrage. But something in him had changed permanently. One day, as he stepped out of school, he found a girl waiting by the bike racks. Alyssa Mendoza. She handed him a flyer. "We're organizing a citywide youth panel. Voices from every school. Kids who've lived it. We want you there." Jamal raised an eyebrow. "Why me?" She smiled. "Because you didn't let it end with cuffs. You started something." He looked down at the flyer, thought about saying no, then remembered the silence of that day, the concrete under his knees, the sound of his father's voice when he said, "That's my son." "Yeah," he said, "I'll come." That night, over dinner, Jamal asked a question he'd been holding on to. "Dad, why didn't you pull rank earlier? You could have stopped it sooner." Walker sat quiet for a moment. "Because if I showed up every time the world treated you unfairly, you'd never know how strong you really are. And I needed them and you to see what it looks like when the truth walks in without knocking." Months passed. A new class of recruits entered the police academy. On their second week, they were required to watch a short video during orientation. It showed body cam footage, news clippings, a teen kneeling on the sidewalk. Then it cut to a boy standing in front of a podium. No yelling, just truth. "My name is Jamal Walker. I'm not a hashtag. I'm not your fear. I'm not your profile. I'm your reminder that the uniform isn't always right, and the skin isn't always wrong." In the back of the room, Sheriff Walker watched in silence. The recruits leaned forward, and for the first time in a long time he believed that maybe, just maybe, the future would listen. If this story moved you, if it made you think, reflect, or feel something real, then don't let it end here. Subscribe to the channel for more powerful, emotional stories that speak truth, challenge injustice, and inspire change. Hit the bell icon so you don't miss the next story that might just change the way you see the world. Your support helps these voices be heard. Like, share, and comment to join the conversation. Together, we're not just watching, we're awakening. See you in the next video.